Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like the minutes to reflect that we held an executive session tonight for personnel issues and legal issues.
Phil, is your microphone on?
It's lit.
Oh, now I can hear you. Okay.
Is that better?
That is better.
Okay. I guess you can hear that. Item 4, approval of minutes.
Second.
The motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bennett? Mrs. Gregory?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold? Yes. Mr. Farr?
Yes. Item 5, business and finance reports.
Motion to approve items 1 through 6.
Second.
The motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Gregory?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes. Item 6, superintendent's report.
I'm looking for a motion to approve items 1 through 6 on the superintendent's report. Motion to approve.
Second.
The motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Gregory?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
And if you just give me a couple minutes here, I wanted to just give the board and the community an update. We are entering into phase 1 of registration for our summer program in grades K through 8. So that will be a targeted registration, and we're going to be reaching out to families directly of students that we've identified that we really think could benefit from the summer program. Once we know how many slots we have left, we will be opening the program up for phase 2, which will be sometime after like the May 13th board meeting. We'll be opening it up to everyone, and folks can register their children for those opportunities through the course of the summer. Again, it's an 8-week program, and it will, we're asking families to commit to 6 weeks, and you can pick and choose, because we realize that there are family vacations and times that, we don't want people to throw away the whole program because they can't attend 1 week or 2 weeks. And we're continuing to look at credit recovery courses at the high school and enrichment courses. And so that planning continues. In addition, we're looking at some of the things that we're going to be doing as far as opening school next year. And Mr. Bosher let me know tonight that band camp is being planned, and so we're hopefully that'll look more normal, I would expect. One of the things that I wanted to inform the public of, and the board as well, is that our cleaning protocols have changed somewhat in the past. When it was our practice to close down an area if a child had been in that area that day and was then subsequently identified as a positive. We would close down that area for 24 hours and then go in and clean. So that might be a cafeteria, it might be a classroom. Using the CDC guidelines, it's no longer recommended that we do that. And what's happening is kids are going, they're leaving school in the morning and they're getting a rapid test. And so this is actually a good thing. We're not going to need to close those areas of the building, so we're still going to be able to use them, and we're still going to go in and clean them. We're just perhaps going to put them at the end of the shift. So we're going to leave the rooms as long as we can, and then it should not cause any closures of any of the areas of our building. So I just wanted to update you on that. That's a little bit different. We're also canvassing our Fusion C3 students to find out how many of them plan to stick with Fusion C3. This informs our staffing discussion as far as next year and staffing the Fusion C3 program. Finally, I just wanted to give you an update on the cases that we're tracking. In this 14-day rolling period, we are currently tracking 7 at the high school, 2 at the intermediate center, 0 at the STEM Academy. Because we had that one-day closure, it allowed us to reset at 0, and 1 case at the primary center. So 10 cases in all. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Committee reports. We had earlier this week, Budget and Finance, I believe, as well as Building and Grounds tonight. Shane, can you update us on those?
Sure. So, can you hear me? It's on.
Oh, now you are.
That's better.
I think it's just the placement of it. Just gonna hold it. So we had a finance committee meeting last week. During that meeting, we reviewed with the committee some of our initial projections for the proposed budget for 21-22, which is what we're going to see here tonight. In addition to that, and what ties in closely with that, is some of the preliminary projections for the use of the ESSER funds. So ESSER 1, ESSER 2. ESSER 1 we have already utilized. ESSER 2 we have yet to apply for, and that will be a part of the 21-22 budget. So you will see that included this evening. So that was a key focus of that meeting. And the Building and Grounds Committee met this evening. We provided an update on the roofing projects. So this summer we will do the roofing of the administration building as well as the high school. And in addition to that, we reviewed the capital projects list for the district and are continuing to update that so that we can prioritize projects across the district for the remaining funds from the bond, as well as potentially the utilization of ESSER funds over the next 3 to 4 years. And finally, we provided an update on the work that we did with an energy services company, ESG, to do an evaluation of the district to identify where we have energy savings projects. And we are beginning the process to prioritize how we might think about those projects. Again, majority of those fall under the capital projects list and had been identified previously. So it's good validation that there are clearly defined energy savings associated with those improvements. So one of the areas that we're in discussion about and looking at from a project standpoint is natural gas conversion. So that is still an area that is under consideration, particularly for the administration building and the intermediate center. And we anticipate that over the next several months, we'll develop an RFQ to request a quote for an energy services company to partner with the district for the actual installation and construction of some of those projects. So more to come on that.
Thank you. The Curriculum Committee also met.
We did. So Annette Shreve and Mary Jean Egan and others, basically the entire math department from K to 8. Those who haven't been writing online curriculum have been working on our new curriculum for math for K to 8. And Mary Jean, jump in when I start messing this up, but parents will understand what I'm saying when I describe it as trying to figure out what they're asking for on a math sheet for your 3rd grader, and you have to Google it, and how sometimes for teachers to understand what the actual targets are that they're supposed to be hitting in these different grades can feel a little bit like that process. So what we did was we had our math team come together, and instead of having a very shallow but broad math curriculum, they identified the most important concepts that need to be covered in the K to 8 programs, and then worked on streamlining those. You might remember a couple years ago we changed our primary center report cards to show actual targeted, what's the word I'm looking for? Not goals, but targeted skills, concepts that needed to be met rather than having just a broad plays well with others. And this curriculum is basically taking that idea and moving it into the entire math curriculum. Is that a fair representation? So that'll be very exciting, and the entire math team from K to 8 was involved. So it wasn't just a small pocket. So when you talk about what we've been accomplishing at Tunkhannock throughout COVID and throughout online classes and throughout quarantines, we managed to completely redo a math curriculum for 9 grades of students. So that's really exciting, and it'll be great to see that rolling out. And I think our teachers are really going to like it as well.
They did a great job. They really did a lot of work. The teachers worked really hard, and they did a great job. It took a lot of time, a lot of professional development, but they worked through it 2 years, and they finally got it together. So.
And now the next step is that we find, texts and materials that fit what we want to teach, how we want to teach it, rather than handing our teachers a book and saying, do this. So that, all those years that we've talked about teaching to tests and all these other things, we've kind of reclaimed that power, if you will, or control over how we teach kids at Tunkhannock.
So the curriculum is up for approval tonight, and then if it is approved tonight, the committee is still working and looking at new reading or math resources. So once we have that approval, they'll start to look at that to align it with the curriculum, and we'll come back for a textbook approval.
Thank you. Going on to new business.
Bill, I'm sorry, I know.
Yes.
One of the things that, there's been some events, obviously, in the community. I'd like to see if we can schedule an extracurricular meeting next week. Lori, are you available Monday or Wednesday? And I didn't get in touch with Rob. I thought he'd be here tonight.
Wednesday I am not, but Monday, Tuesday, I am.
Can you, Todd? Yeah, Monday, okay? No? So I'd
What
like,
time are you thinking?
6 o'clock. I mean, I'm open at any time. 6 o'clock could be
I'm
fine.
open
Is it?
Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. No Wednesday.
Yeah, Monday works.
Unless, Kenny, you know,
Wednesday and Thursday.
okay.
So Monday, okay, 6 o'clock. Plan in the high school. We'll be back in the high school, right, Heather? So let's 6 o'clock, and I'll get in touch with Rob. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
The Visa account is there for your review, as well as monthly summaries of Kelly services and the substitute teacher fill rate. On the new business, we are looking for a resolution to approve agreement with PSBA for policy maintenance.
Motion to approve.
Do we have a second? A second? Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Pavola?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Gregory?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes. Item 4, looking for a resolution for a temporary non-precedent setting exception that employees who have exhausted all available paid leave time not be charged per diem rate for health benefits during a period of unpaid absence due to a documented COVID-related absence. That's
Motion approved.
through June.
Second.
The motion is second. Any discussion?
And that goes until,
No
end of
later
June.
than June 30th.
okay,
Yes. Yes.
okay,
This is an extension.
okay, okay.
For us to continue that practice to the end of the year.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Roll call.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Gregory?
Yes.
Dr. Pavola?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes. Item 5, looking for a resolution to adopt and approve the K-8 math curriculum as
Motion approved.
discussed.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
No.
Mrs. Gregory?
Yes.
Dr. Pavola?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes. Item 6 is the academic calendar proposed.
So I had sent this out to you guys. I only heard back from one person, so we really need to adopt something. It's So what's in front of you, we can make some changes to it and we'll capture that, and that can be the adopted calendar, but we just need to get it done.
Motion approved as per the super.
Spring break tied to Easter break, just because of, if people actually wanted to use it for travel, it's impossible to travel without paying a premium and all those things around the holiday. But otherwise, it's not something I obviously, not a mountain I feel like dying on. So I'm fine with that if that's how we want to keep it.
Anybody else? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Gregory?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes. Item 7 is looking for a motion to approve a proposed final budget. And I believe there are copies that have been made available. And the copies, this one I have only has a 0 mil increase.
So
Are there
you
others?
should have in front of you 3 versions. One is a 0, 1, and 2 mil increase, just so that you can see the initial projections. So I have just a couple of quick slides, and what I will start with is just a quick budgetary timeline as a refresher for folks who are here tonight. And Mr. Swilly is not here, so in his absence, I will say that the purpose of tonight's meeting for the proposed budget is really a very early look at what the projections are. It is a requirement by the state. There is a very particular timeline that needs to be met in order to give the public enough time for review. And so all these dates are established by the state. So what we are doing tonight is adopting the proposed final budget. There is no commitment that the board is making to these specific numbers that you see before you. It is, again, just a preliminary look. On May 13th, we will have another board meeting with a discussion of key highlights from the 21-22 budget. On the 31st, that's the PDE deadline for the proposed budget adoption. So the timeline between tonight and the 31st is what is dictated by PDE, and this is the appropriate board meeting for us to do the proposed. June 10th, we will have the board approval of the final budget, so that by June 30th, we will meet the PDE deadline for the final budget adoption. So let's just hit on a few key factors to keep in mind as we move forward. First, the 21-22 budget incorporates revenue and expenses associated with the ESSER II grant. This is a little bit different than how we have approached grants in the past, and this is emerging in terms of recommendations and things that are starting to develop across the state. Many schools have opted to include ESSER II in their 21-22 budget on both the revenue as well as the expense side. So what that means is we have taken an initial cut at how money from ESSER II will be spent in the 21-22 school year. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I have a slide to kind of show some of those highlights. Please keep in mind that there is also then on top of that ESSER III. So for the Tunkhannock School District, ESSER I is approximately $1.9 million and ESSER III is approximately $3.9 million. We have not applied for either of those yet. So the process looks like application, identifying where you intend to spend the money, application, and then funds begin arriving in the district. So more to come, and we will most likely apply for ESSER III also in 21-22, but it's a little too early for us to incorporate that into the budget because we do not have specific details on how that portion of it is intended to be spent. I also want to say that again, this is early in the process. We have a 3 to 4 year window of spending for those ESSER funds. So while we may make projections for 21-22, obviously as things like our summer program progress, we're going to learn a lot more about actual costs relative to our projections, and we will have much firmer numbers as we proceed with the remaining ESSER funding over the next 3 years. Okay, so as I highlighted, the next bullet talks about how we are earmarking approximately 1.6 million in the next year's budget. Keep in mind that of that total 1.9, we have earmarked approximately 300,000 for this spring. So when we identified the things that we needed to go do in order to reopen and bring both cohorts back at the high school, and in STEM, there were a number of things that we had to go do in order to prepare for that. So that included things like technology support. It included like the dividers that we used, some of the flooring, the tents. So a portion of ESSER 2 will go toward those expenses. The remaining portion, which is approximately 1.6 million, is currently bucketed into these 5 areas. And this, again, is approximations. Number 1 is summer programming. So you have heard Ms. McPherson over the last several board meetings talk about our anticipated uses and planning for summer programming in the summer of this year, 2021. So in K to 8, there is a very specific camp format that she shared in the last board meeting. In 7 to 12, we have a combination of credit recovery, enrichment. There's a number of different options that are currently under development. Right now, we anticipate that that will cost the district about $625,000. It's important to remember that there are a number of components in that. So we are providing transportation. There are a number of staff that will be necessary in order for us to execute a program of this magnitude. There are material needs. There are field trips that are being planned. All of those have associated costs. And again, right now we're just basing that on some of our estimates in terms of how many students we expect to participate. And that number will continue to evolve as we get more details over the next several weeks. We also have approximately 600,000 identified for educational intervention. So in addition to the summer camp program, we also know that there are going to be needs such as targeted educational improvements in certain areas that may require additional teacher support over the course of the next year. We also may have specific materials that we would like to purchase in order to enhance specific educational needs across the district. The combination of those things is approximately 600,000. We, at this point in time, are anticipating that we should plan for, at least from a budgetary standpoint, Mahoopany operational costs. Now again, it's early in the process and it's difficult for us to say exactly where that may shake out over the next 3 to 4 months. But from an earmark standpoint, right now those expenses are included in next year's budget and would be offset by revenue from ESSER. Operational expenses. So we have gone through the maintenance and custodial budget and identified costs that we incur that are in direct correlation to COVID mitigation. So things like cleaning supplies, PPE, things that we know are incremental costs that are directly associated with how we clean and maintain our buildings in this environment. And we have been able to identify those, and those would be covered under ESSER. And then finally, we have Fusion C3. So we know that we are going to continue to have ongoing costs associated with Fusion C3, and we have dollars associated with that. I believe that that is approximately 100,000. Okay? So this is just kind of a very top line look. I use this format each year just for the purposes of comparison. So right now the 2021 budgeted expenses are about 53 million and the revenue that we're projecting is about 50 million. So again, this is just our first look at this, but I will tell you that this breakdown becomes a very recurring theme. So we've talked a lot about how much of our expenses are in essence locked in through fixed costs. So you can see here, wages, benefits, debt service, transportation, and utilities compose 85% of our budget. So 85% of our budget is contractual commitments that have very little room for us to make adjustments year on year. Wages comprises 40% of that, and benefits is 30%. I also wanted to just give you a quick look at the general fund balance because that's always an important discussion, especially when there's a gap between revenue and expenses. So you can see that the general fund balance was decreasing from about 2014 to about 2016. We were able to stabilize in that 2016-17 year, and for about 3 years remained relatively flat. Last year, we actually made progress against the general fund. We had savings last year relative to what we had projected, and the general fund balance actually increased. So at the beginning of this year, we had a general fund balance of approximately $5.6 million. Projections right now, we had anticipated that we would be at about a $1.2 million deficit this year and have to work into the general fund balance. And so far, our early projections are we're doing better than that. So I would say that we are under a $1 million deficit and probably closer to about $600,000 to $700,000. And that's kind of where we would anticipate. But again, we have several months remaining, and so it's a little early for us to call that one. So what's next steps? First, over the next several weeks, we are going to continue to make adjustments on the expense side in response to emerging data. So as we continue to gather information about our summer programs, we're going to start to get numbers in terms of students who are committed to participating in those programs. That will give us a much better understanding. We also know that there may be additional retirements that have yet to come forward. And so that's always a key piece, especially when wages and benefits account for 70% of our budget. So we are going to continue to monitor that, make adjustments. In the meeting on May 13th, we'll come back. We're going to hit on some of those key highlights and kind of do a breakdown of some of those items in a little bit more detail and respond, answer questions, give you time as a board to digest and come back to us with questions that you may have or suggestions relative to particular areas. So what we need tonight is a motion to adopt a resolution to approve one of the versions that you have in front of you. So, any questions?
And the budget is 0%, no increase. We have a deficit of just under $3 million. A $1 million increase would give us a deficit of $2.6 million roughly. And a $2 million increase would give us a deficit of a little more than $2.3 million deficit.
Again, just to make sure that particularly for the public who may be new to this process, regardless of what version you approve here tonight, you are not passing a tax increase. You are not committing to any particular tax number for the coming year. So that is what happens in the final budget process. So as you're kind of making a decision tonight, I just want to make sure the public is aware that it is not a commitment with regards to taxes.
Yes, the final one will be in June. And by the looks of it, we should be somewhere around the $5 million fund balance by June. So.
I'll make a motion, $0 million increase.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for $0 million increase. Any discussion? One difficulty that we are seeing is that our revenue does not keep up with inflation, but our expenses continue to rise with inflation. So that's going to be a problem for us going forward. Some districts in other parts of the state have faster growing districts that have building going on and have a tax base that's expanding. Unfortunately, we're not seeing that.
Shane, can you, if you remember off the top of your head, remind us of how much less Procter & Gamble is paying now because they appealed to pay less, and how much we stand to lose because Walmart has also appealed and wants to pay less?
Off the top of my head, I couldn't answer that and feel confident in those numbers, but I can bring that back for you for the next year, or the next meeting. So I can tell you that in this year, there was no adjustment for either.
Right.
Next year, there is an adjustment for P&G, but it is not the full amount, so that was a 3-year
Right.
ramp up. So I can bring those back to you.
Because P&G had a very substantial decrease in what taxes they're going to be paying to not just the school district, but the municipality and the county. The negotiation brought it to where instead of them taking their full deduction off in 1 year, there was no change the first year. The second year, there's a partial deduction, and the third year it goes full, or the fourth year. It was one of those, the fourth year. So we're going to be getting less from them, and we're actually in the middle of an appealing, or however you want to word that, for Walmart, who also wants to pay less in in taxes to the school district and county and municipality. So if the revenue numbers look smaller, despite not having a tax decrease for the county, that is a piece of that puzzle.
I think the other issue too, and I'm not obviously enthusiastic about raising taxes on the community. This year, we've had a tough year. The COVID has affected the community. I just don't think until we get maybe additional data, I'm not in favor of raising taxes this year. We can always look at it later. I know what other districts are doing, Phil. I just think that this is the year that we really, need to give a break to the community. I think everything falls on the community, the students. And I think we've had a rough year, so I'm not in favor. That's why I made the motion for a no tax increase. But that can change, obviously. We can maybe get more data.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Okay. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Gregory?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes. And we will be doing the final budget in June. Okay, that's the last item on the agenda. Are there any additional public comments? Yes, Craig.
I just had a real quick question. Is the calendar the way it's submitted final, or are you still going to do a couple little tweaks to it with the permission of the board?
It's as final as Tom Wolfe will allow it to be.
That answer your question? Okay. Anybody else? No?
There's one right here.
Anything.
Anything?
There's a microphone right up
Yeah, if you
here.
could please come here. It's difficult to hear from back there.
The reason I'm here, I'm a grandma. I have
Your name, please?
Carol Jonas. I have 4 grandchildren. Well, I have more than 4 grandchildren, but 3 that are in this school district. 1 is in the high school and 2 are in the 2nd grade. And the message that you send out sometimes can be very confusing. I've had times when I'm the babysitter at my daughter's house, and she said, "Oh, no school today, no virtual." Well, then we found out it's not virtual, it's in school, and it was a different building. Is it possible for the computer people, because they're supposed to be, computers are supposed to be so great, to be able to put like an I or an H or a P before the person's name, and then only the person in the intermediate center, only the person in the high school, only the person in the primary center are the ones that get called. And you don't get a call if your kid's not in that area.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand any of that. I apologize.
The call, the all call.
The call.
Yeah.
I think she's saying sometimes they're confusing and I think you want them separated, is that?
Right.
Oh,
Like only primary students.
Get the call if the primary center's closed, and only the high school kids get the call if the high school is closed, rather than sending it out to everyone, because I know it's not just us, because I've heard from other people. Well, we got the call, but we couldn't figure it out, and my granddaughter said, well, I got the call, and I looked on the website, and I couldn't find anything on the website, and luckily her son is in special ed, and so the lady that works with him called and said, he's supposed to be in school today. And it was like, oh dear, because my granddaughter was supposed to be in school today, so I had to quick rush them both up there. And then because they missed the bus and weren't there for the beginning, it's an unexcused absence, and that sucks. Thank you.
Is there any way we can get the information from the all-call on the website? Or is,
It's constantly.
It's up there,
You
yeah.
have to
It's,
go to the superintendent's message at the top of the website and
Yep.
click on it. It's not
it's
just-
always there. So you go right to the website, it's the very top one, a
Yeah,
message
yeah.
from the superintendent. Yeah.
So to make it, the tech department make sure they get it correct. So
anyone else? Don't see anybody else?
I'll just say, I wanted to thank Kenny for all the effort that he's putting in right now. The spring sports, maybe just because my family's involved, seem like they've been a little bit more complex and convoluted, and things have been changing and shuffling a lot more than other seasons this year. So thanks for constantly climbing the ever-moving mountain there.
Yeah, and I will say that partly what we're meeting about Monday is the extracurricular issues, and we're going to try to look at this because I know I've gotten feedback. It's obviously been disruptive, and I think there's a lot of good questions out there in the community. I would encourage anyone who has an interest to be here on Monday or be at the high school auditorium on Monday I think we've got to do some problem solving.
Okay. Anybody else?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn? We're adjourned. Thank
And
you,
these are
everyone.
ours, right? All right.